there's reference to the book called Sports Astrology, which is written by, I believe, Prolly is the last name, John Prolly, I think. And it's an excellent book. It's based on Western astrology, and I've used the techniques, and part of this course will be to teach you those techniques that I found work the best, even from his system, from the Western astrology perspective. And there are some things that I found that aren't as consistent, but there are certain techniques that are dead on. And when you combine them with the Vedic astrology, then that's when ideally you get the most bang for your buck. So yeah, but this is primarily a class on Vedic astrology, and if you're new to the Vedic astrology, then you'll need to bone up a little bit on the basics, which I'll be doing before our official class starts. I'll spend a week teaching you the basics, and especially as related to contest prediction. So we'll do at least a week of prep before the actual class begins. All right, well, I'm going to shut up here for a second and do some logistics. And if you have any questions before the class starts in 10 minutes, just pipe up, let us know. And in the meantime, I'm going to mute myself and pull up some programs here. All right, well, I think we'll get started, and it is customary when doing Vedic astrology, which is considered a divine science, to invoke divine assistance by offering a little prayer. So I'm going to say a little Sanskrit invocation, and those of you who are who know this can feel free to chime in. Otherwise, just enjoy. Om Gananaham Tvam Ganapatigum Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspata Anaha Shramvannu Tibihi Sida Sadhanam Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Siddhi Buddhi Shakti Sahita Shriman Mahaganadipataye Namo Namaha Nirvignam Kuruno Deva Shubhakaryeshu Sarvada. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Okay, well, welcome everybody, and welcome to Winning with Jyotish. This is the free first class on the subject of how to judge contest charts. But above and beyond judging the contest or the winner of, say, a sports match, we can use these very same techniques to choose between any option. And I think you'll see this illustrated as we move on. Now, any questions before we get started? If anyone has a particular class-related question, feel free to chime in now before I start the lecture, or you can also type in the chat. You can type your question in the chat. All right. All right, well, if there are no questions, we're going to just jump right in here. And what I'm going to do is share my screen with you. And tell me if you guys are seeing my screen. Can somebody just, because I can't see you anymore, can someone just unmute themselves or chat and say, yes, I see you?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, so today's lecture is on choosing winners in sports and life. And just to give you a little background, um, the idea of how this works and why this works is because a sporting event, any event actually, is like a contest is a space-time event, just as a human life is. Just like a human life, everything that has a birth, that has a certain duration, and that has an ending is a space-time event, meaning it began in a certain place and time and it ended in a certain place and time. As a result, just like a human chart, a human natal chart, we can plug into that event to determine how it's going to go. And in the case of a contest chart, it's easy. It's a black and white outcome. Will a team win or lose or possibly draw? So the goal of this program is not to turn you into gamblers, but to share with you the idea that sports, at least this is my take on it. You can use this information any way you choose, but my take on this is that sport is a proving ground to help you test and prove your techniques. And because sports offers a black and white kind of very quick result, you can see if your techniques work or not. And some of the astrologers whom I admire very highly in the last century, like Mr. K.S. Krishnamurti, whose techniques will be adopted, some of whose techniques we'll be adopting, Mr. Iyer, Sheshadri Iyer, they used their techniques at the horse races, and they used them playing cards because they wanted to see if this astrology stuff applies to more than just, you know, you're a good spiritual person, you have a nice personality. If that's the kind of astrology you're used to, this class is going to be a shock to your system because this class is about those black and white outcomes. Who will win, who will not win, um, and do these techniques work in the real world? So that's a little bit of the background. Let's get started, and I'll tell you just briefly how I got into this, because I never set out to become um, a prognosticator or a sports investor, as the term is called. My journey started basically in this June of 2014, so just a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, when I saw a match in the World Cup. And the match was so thrilling that I thought I should really pull the chart to see what happened. And this is the chart. Now I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. I hope you guys can see this. Here's the information, June 13th, 2014, the place where it happened. Okay. And this info is available to you if you want it. And this was a match between Holland and Spain. And the reason I say it was an amazing match was because the favorite, the team that everyone thought would win, Spain, scored first. And everyone thought, okay, well, this is over, you know, it's going to be predictable. And as it turned out, Holland came back and scored 5 goals and just destroyed them in such a beautiful way. I mean, the goals were just spectacular. And I thought, wow, no one expected this. This must be somehow a spectacular chart. So that little voice in my head said, you should pull the chart. And I finally did. And here it is. And I thought, okay, well, how do I read this? How do I make sense of what just happened? And I thought about some of the rules of Vedic astrology. One of the rules says that when you read a chart, the home team should get the ascendant. The home team meaning the team that's hosting the event. But here, there is no home team. The country is Brazil, and Holland and Spain are both visitors. So that little voice in my head that sometimes, you know, gives me insight said that the favorite should get the ascendant. Now, I know some of you have read Mr. Prolly's excellent book on sports prediction in Western astrology, and he adheres to the same principle. I found this out about a year and a half later, that the same principle is that the favorite gets the lagna. The lagna is the ascendant. So how do you know who is the favorite? Well, this is what eventually led me into the world of sports investment and betting and so on, which is you have to go to an online wagering website. Or there are other sites that aren't wagering sites that will give you the odds, but the wagering websites tend to be the most reliable. And that's a topic for, we will cover that later on in the class, and how to navigate those sites and how to really be able to tell which team most people are betting on and thinking will win, and which team has value and all of that. But that's not the main thrust of today's class. Now, so the favorite here was Spain, and they are represented by the ascendant. The underdog is represented by the 7th house. So in any contest, you, the person who is in the contest, is the 1st house, and the opponent is the 7th house. If it's a contest between you and someone else, if it's a contest between two teams, the favorite is the 1st house, and their challenger is the 7th. Okay. Now, if you're doing a prashna is a horary chart. The rules are a little different, meaning, let's say, for example, you ask me as the astrologer, you say, hey, I lost my ring. Where is it? Help me find my ring. Well, in that case, that is a question, a horary chart. And when I cast a chart, you are the ascendant, and your ring then probably will be the 2nd house, your movable possession. And then I'll look, where is the Lord of the 2nd house? And I'll try to find your ring that way. Now, if in a prashna you ask, hey, will the Green Bay Packers win the game? In a prashna, you can use the name that you hear first for the ascendant. So in that case, it doesn't matter if the Green Bay Packers are the favorite or not, or the home team. The person in divine order said the Green Bay Packers. And as soon as they say the name of the person, that is one way to cast a prashna. They get the ascendant. Is this making sense so far to you guys? And if it's not, shoot me a little chat or just chime in really quick. I prefer if your questions are brief so that then I can elaborate. But hopefully this is making sense to you. So if your question is, hey, will the Green Bay Packers win? Then Green Bay is the ascendant. They get the lagna. All right. Or let's say the question, then the person phrases the question differently. If they say, hey, who will win between Green Bay and Atlanta? Haha. Now it becomes, now they've said two names. So here in a prashna, in a horary chart, you can use the home team as the ascendant. I still prefer to use the team mentioned first as the lagna. Okay. So that's a little tip that I found works consistently. And why does it work? The reason is because the person asking you the question carries the seed of the answer with them. The way they ask the question is, astrology believes in divine order, and the order that the question is asked in, at the time it's asked and the place it's asked, is like the seed. And you are the gardener watering that seed, helping it flower, and then reaping the fruit of it. But they carry the seed of the answer with them. So just remember that when you do astrology, that it doesn't operate in a vacuum. So Parashara says, Nahi Nastikaya Deyam, means don't give this knowledge to Nastikas. Nastika means someone who isn't a believer, who isn't righteous, who isn't living the correct lifestyle, or who is just trying to test you, or who is not really wanting to know, who's just curious but doesn't really have a strong desire to have the answer. So when you do astrology for people who don't really want to know, it doesn't work because they don't carry the seed of the answer with them. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. So this is for a horary chart, but what we're going to be doing primarily is looking at the chart at a game chart, which is the actual chart for the moment the game began. So this chart here is for the exact time the actual game began. The advantage of doing that is that you don't need somebody to ask you the question. You don't have to go to Salvador, Brazil, and have some Holland fan say, "Yeah, is my team going to win? Are they going to win? Please tell me, Mr. Astrologer." Right? You can simply pull the chart for the moment the match begins. And that's the birth chart of the match. And in that case, the favorite always gets the lugna. So this method is simpler than the horary, but you can also use prashna, which is horary astrology. Okay, I'm spending a little time on this beforehand, but I sort of want to build this up because this was the thinking process that I had to go through to figure this out. Because there were no books on this when I started researching, at least not in Vedic astrology. All right, so the one technique that I did know at the time was a very simple technique that says malefic planets. The malefic planets are Saturn, Mars, Sun, Rahu, and Ketu, primarily. We don't count the Moon or Mercury. So the malefics in Upachaya houses. Upachayas are houses 1, 3, 6, 10, and 11. I'll show you those in a second. When you have malefics in those houses, they show good physical strength and fighting spirit. So what does that mean? So this is technique number 1. This is a very simple classical technique. I didn't invent this. That tells you who has more or less more physical strength. And sometimes that can be enough to confer victory. But oftentimes it's not the only thing in play. So for physical strength, we're going to want to look at those houses. And I'm going to draw a little bit on the page here. So let's see how this goes. So the first house, right, is here. The third house is here. The sixth house is here. The 10th house is here. And the 11th is here. Now, those of you who are thinking in Jyotish, hey, the first house is not an Upachaya house, you are correct. But for this method, we include the first house because the dictum says the person with the malefic planet in their ascendant should win. Okay, this is a simple Vedic astrology dictum, very general. Okay, it doesn't always happen, but there you go. It's a simple precept. All right, so for the home team, the victory houses are the 1st, the 3rd, the 6th, the 10th, and the 11th. Now, if you don't know that these are the 1st, 3rd, 6th, 10th, and 11th houses, then you need a little refresher on Jyotish. And I will be offering that for the next week or so, but hopefully this much is clear to you. Now, for the opposing side, the houses will be the same, except you're going to count them from the 7th house. So from the 7th, this is the 1st house. This is the 3rd house. This is the 6th. This is the 10th. And this is the 11th. Okay? Now, simply for this technique, all we do is count how many malefics each team has. So the green team, the favorite, has nothing in their ascendant, nothing in the 3rd. They have Ketu, a malefic in the 6th. The problem with that is that wherever Ketu is, Rahu is going to be opposite, which means the other team is going to have them in their Upachaya as well. So we don't count Rahu Ketu for this. or you can count them both. You'll still get the same result. So let's just count it. So Ketu is 1 malefic, nothing in the 10th house, and they have Mars in the 11th. So the favorite team has two malefics, okay? For the favorite, I'm going to try to draw here like a 2-year-old. And now the underdog, the other team, the red team, has a malefic in their ascendant, the sun. They have nothing in their 3rd house. They have Saturn and Rahu in their 6th house. So now they have 3. Nothing in their 10th and nothing in their 11th. So 3 planets for the underdog. Okay. And I thought, okay, well, that's fine and good, but why did they win 5-1? Surely this isn't all that there is, because if this is it, it doesn't really paint the picture, does it, of how this match went, which is a huge blowout in soccer, or football, as the rest of the world calls it. So I knew this wasn't enough, but this was, and this continues to be a useful technique to judge which team has a little bit stronger, physically stronger players. Later on, we're going to see which team has the best mental strength and focus, which team has luck on their side, which team has a sort of a spiritual destiny to win, and so on. But for right now, this is the physical level. And those of you who are yogis and who practice yoga, you know that there are 5 koshas, 5 bodies. And the first kosha, the first layer, is the annamaya kosha, the physical, the body made of physical matter, of food. And that's the least strong in terms of creating an effect. Then there's the pranamaya kosha, then the manomaya kosha. So there's different levels of influence, and we are able to judge that in the chart. All right, so let's move on here. No, we don't want that. We want. All right, so that's the first technique is the malefics and upachayas. Then I noticed something in this chart, which is a yoga called Shubha Kartari Yoga. Now, you don't have to know these names necessarily, but Shubha means positive, good. Kartari means cutter or scissors, and yoga means combination. So Shubha Kartari Yoga means the positive scissors combination, and Papa Kartari is the negative scissors combination. What that means is this. What I noticed here is that the underdog has 2 benefics on either side of its ascendant. So here is the 6th house. Here is the 8th house. And I should probably use green color for this, and on either side, there is a benefic. Do you see this? Venus here. And in fact, there's 2 benefics here, Jupiter and Mercury. When I noticed this, I thought, this is called Shubha Kartari Yoga, and this means that the team indicated by this 7th house has 2 guardian angels on either side of it. Folks, this is one of the more powerful techniques that I've discovered that works for sports prediction. When a team has 2 undisturbed benefics on either side of its ascendant, it is a strong indication for victory. Now, when I say undisturbed, you're going to say, wait, there's Ketu there, the south node. I found that the node, because it's invisible, in Sanskrit called a Chayagraha, an invisible shadow planet. It's not an actual thing of substance, that it doesn't mar this yoga. If you were looking in the sky, you would only have seen Venus. Well, you wouldn't have seen Venus, it's below the horizon, but you would have seen Venus on one side of the sun and Jupiter and Mercury on the other. Here. All right. So this yoga is called Shubha Kartari because it's benefics. The same operates when malefics hem in a particular ascendant, like Saturn on one side, Mars on the other, or Sun on one side and Saturn on the other. Okay. So when I saw this, I thought, the underdog had two divine angels around it. And what happens in soccer and football is that it becomes very hard for the other team to score on them. It's like they have two extra goalies. Okay. And the reverse is true. When a team has malefics, it becomes very easy for the other team to score on them. So that's the effect of Papa Kartari and Shubha Kartari. All right, so let's go back to our little slideshow here. All right, so now the next day, I pulled the chart. Okay, I thought that was interesting. Here is the chart for the next day. This is the team. These are the two teams that played the following day, June 14th, same time. If you look at this chart, and by the way, you can tell I use North Indian, but the South Indian is open to you here as well to read. This was a huge matchup between a favorite, Uruguay, and a huge underdog, Costa Rica. And the exact same thing happened. Look at the chart. The only thing that's moved is the moon. The moon is moved about 12 degrees, 13 degrees or so. That's the only change. The ascendant, all the planets are exactly where they were for the previous match. And guess what happened? The favorite, Uruguay, scored first, just like in the Spain game. The favorite scored on a penalty, just like in the Spain game. And just like in the Spain game, the underdog came back and blew them out. In this case, 3-1, not 5-1. Well, wait, Simon, why was it 3-1 if it was the same chart? The reason is that Costa Rica was a much bigger underdog than Holland. Holland was a 5-1, Costa Rica was about an 8-1 underdog. And so to test Jyotish and to sort of test this theory, before this match, I actually put $50 on Costa Rica, and we ended up winning something like $600 on that. And that's what really got me started in that this stuff works. Okay. Any questions so far on what we've covered? Let me just check in here. Okay. So, okay. All right. So now the question is, does this combination always win? And that is an excellent question. So I'm just going to take you to a match to show you this combination, because nothing works in isolation. So here we have a match 3 days later, June 17th, between Brazil and Mexico. Brazil was the huge favorite. Again, Mexico was an underdog. In this game, I bet that Mexico would draw, that it would be an even match. And somehow, by some miracle, that's how it turned out. I still don't know how I got that intuition, but I can walk you through my thinking process. So here again, we have the same chart, right? We have Venus on one side, Jupiter and Mercury on the other. But what's different in this chart? What has changed? Which planet, besides the moon will always move around. Which planet has changed? Has Mars moved? No, it hasn't. Saturn and Rahu are still here. Let's see. Yeah, the sun, exactly. So if you guys are thinking the sun, look, the sun was here, wasn't it? Now it's moved into the 8th house. So what before, remember, before the sun being in the seventh was a malefic in the ascendant of the underdog, meaning it gave them physical strength. But now it's moved out of that house. So instead of being a helpful planet for the underdog, it's become an unhelpful planet. Why? Because now it's marring this very nice hemming yoga, the Shubha Kartari yoga. Again, you don't have to necessarily know the names. These will all be in handouts that I'll be giving you guys once the course begins. But you should understand the principle that now we have a malefic here who is kind of spoiling these good angels. So what happened? Well, the sun and K2 made the job that Mexico's guardian angels had to do much harder. And so their goalie had to make these miraculous saves, so much so that they basically said that this was the most entertaining draw in FIFA World Cup history. And that they would be building statues to this goalie forever in Mexico City. I mean, that's how dramatic it was. So this ended up being a 0-0 game. So still, the underdog outperformed expectations. They had those two angels on their sides, but those angels were also bothered. You know, one angel maybe had the flu, so they were doing their best, but they couldn't help enough to have Mexico win the game. And that's, I think, what I saw. And the reason I said, you know, Mexico is going to outperform expectations, but I don't think they're going to win. So I actually bet on the draw in that game, and that's how it worked out. So Shubha Kartari doesn't always win, but it will help their team outperform expectations. Okay. Now, I do have some examples of modern instances of this. So I'm going to share with you, just give me a moment to pull up a new window on my screen. All right. Can everyone see this chart? Yes, excellent. Thank you. This is the chart for the game just played about a week ago or a couple of weeks ago, Green Bay versus Atlanta. And in this game, Atlanta was the favorite. So they were represented by the Ascendant. Can any of you spot which technique sealed the deal for me in this game and help me to pick the winner? So here is the Ascendant, the home team. Let's see, I'm getting a couple of chats. PKY, Papa Kartari Yoga, Papa Kartari Yoga for the 7th house. Very good, guys. So here we have a malefic. I really should make this red, right? All right, so we have a malefic Saturn and a malefic Sun around the 7th house. The 7th is the underdog. So this is the opposite of what we just saw with Costa Rica and Mexico. This is Papa Kartari. What I've found with Papa Kartari is that the team will have a very hard time getting going and have a hard time scoring points. As a general rule, Papa Kartari Yoga is not as negative as Shubha Kartari Yoga is positive. Now, again, this isn't in the notes and the handouts to the class, but just this is something to understand. But it's still a very hampering kind of influence. And this is made even worse by having this debilitated moon here. So in a sense, if you want to anthropomorphize, think of these two malefics as bad angels, little devils, and they just irritate you. It's like you've got a mosquito around buzzing in your right ear, and you've got a mosquito buzzing in your left ear, and you're constantly just kind of scratching and trying to get away, and you're distracted, and you can't play the game the way you usually play the game. So when I saw this Papa Kartari Yoga, it was fairly clear to me that the favorite would win the game. And so I actually did wager on this one. I did not wager on the other one. And by the way, I do want to discuss, we are going to talk about, sports investment as a form of investment, but I'm very strict on this, because if you're going to embark down the road of using this to profit yourself, you really have to know the pitfalls. You have to know if it's your Dharma, if it is your purpose on this planet to be a speculator. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. I don't want to change directions right now. All right, so there's the Papa Kartari. Now, what about in terms of the first technique, which is physical strength? In terms of physical strength, the favorite here also has the advantage, don't they? Because the victory houses, again, are the 1st, the 3rd, the 6th, the 10th, and the 11th. So in this case, the favorite has Rahu, that's 1, Saturn, that's 2, Mars. They have 3 legitimate malefics. And you can even make a case that the moon is, because it's debilitated and dark and grumpy, you can even say 3.5 malefics. But we'll just keep it at 3. And what does the underdog have? Nothing. They just have Ketu in their 3rd house. So it's a 3-to-1 advantage in the first technique and Papa Kartari Yoga. Folks, this was a no-brainer. Atlanta was destined to win this game. All right. Now, if we look at the other playoff a couple of weeks ago, here is Pittsburgh and New England. Of course, hindsight is 20/20, right? So it's easy to see in hindsight. But can anybody spot what's happening here as well? Let me know you're alive and that you see it. I want to know that you guys are following this. So this is the, oh, and by the way, I'm sorry I don't have a South Indian chart for this. I suppose I could pull it up. Yeah, so again, excellent, Kumarji. We have a Papa Kartari. We have the same thing, basically. We have a malefic on either side. We have the sun here and Mars here. And here it's even more clear because these 2 malefics have, well, the other side was pretty clear too. But I mean, there's nothing stopping these bad boys from stinging you and irritating you if you happen to be this 7th house. So again, the team in the 7th house lost this game. So these are the 2 techniques so far. The first is the physical strength, and the second is what I would call a sort of blessing. This is a divine blessing or a divine curse, having these angels either against you or for you, depending on who you're rooting for. All right? So now, at the risk of being too personal, you can also apply this to everyday life. Just recently, I was asked a question, and this is, obviously there's no names involved here. This is the question, a relationship question. And the client asked me, is she the one? Oh my God, that's a lot of pressure to put on an astrologer, right? Is she the one? Meaning, is she the person? Is this the person I'm destined to marry, be with, spend the rest of my life with? Well, whoever you take as the ascendant, whether you take she, the person, as the lagna, or you take your client, the questioner, as the Lagna, the Ascendant. What we have here clearly, again, is a case of this Papa Kartari Yoga. Two malefics on either side of the 7th house. So if we take her as the Ascendant, then that means her partner, you, is the 7th house, and it means you're not the one for her. Or if we take you as the Ascendant, then she's not the one. But either way, you're not right for each other. Does that make sense? And there's a good comment. If you have to ask in the first place, it's probably not a good sign. And that is a general principle. But as a Jyotishi, you have to take every question with full seriousness, because this is what the universe and nature is speaking to you. And some people who have marriage reluctance, people who they may find gold in the middle of the desert, but they won't pick it up because they think, it's probably not gold. It's probably not the thing that I think it is. And they'll walk away. There are people who have that kind of personality. So for them, they're asking out of a different space, aren't they? They're asking out of a place of cynicism. And it's your job to see if she is the one to go, yeah, man, you found gold in the desert. Pick it up. Pick it up. Right? So it's not always the case that if they have to ask, that it's probably not true, because people have different personalities. But in this case, my answer was probably not. There is always free will operative. But in addition to that, we have another principle in play, which I will discuss. This is a whole another 2-hour class just on this principle. We have a planet, Ketu and Rahu, exactly conjunct one of the sensitive cusps. So we see Rahu here within 1 degree of the ascendant, and Ketu within 1 degree of the descendant, which is the same 10 degrees 25 in the 7th house. Yes, we have moon there as well, which is the moon always reflects the query. It reflects what is the person really thinking about. So the person is really thinking about 7th house partnerships, and the moon rules the 12th house of sorrow, escape, but also being confined and locked in a certain space with someone. So this person is afraid of maybe being confined in a marriage or a relationship, and maybe he's looking to escape. And the question is specific to a relationship. So the moon definitely reflects what the person is asking about. And the answer is that there is Ketu exactly on the 7th cusp. And Ketu is not a very romantic graha or planet. In fact, it is a separative influence. So that is confluence that, along with this Ketu and this Papa Kartari Yoga, in the answer to this question was she is likely not the one. And so they've had a lot of, anyway, so I don't want to go into their personal history, but that's how it's playing out. So does this make sense so far to you guys? Is this, and I hope my use of the North Indian chart is not disturbing you. Some of you I know are South Indian Jyotishis. So, okay, very good, very good. All right. Aye, aye, excellent. Okay, good to hear. So I'm gonna move on with our presentation here a little bit. All right, so can you guys see the presentation again now? I'm gonna move to the next slide. So the next slide says, what about benefics? Can you use benefics in a, what do you do with benefics in the chart? So far we've only used malefics, and we've only seen benefics in the context of the Shubha Kartari Yoga, but can we use them with the first technique? So here is a chart for another game during the World Cup. So now I'm going to have you guys figure this out. Now, I shouldn't have even put the team names because you probably know who won. But here we have the favorite in the first house, the favorite. And here we have the underdog. Who do you think, just based on technique number 1, who do you think has the advantage? And remember, technique 1 is when malefics sit in houses 1, 3, 6, 10, or 11 for the favorite, and the same houses from the 7th house as well. All right, so I'm getting a few people, yes, favorite, favorite, favorite. Yeah, because the favorite has more malefics in the upachaya. By the way, the word upachaya has to do with improvement. Things get better in those houses. So anyway, so the favorite has Mars. Now notice I'm using the outer planets here. For this technique, we do not use Neptune. We do not use Pluto. We do not use Uranus. Wherever Uranus is, there's Uranus. We only use the visible planets, okay? So note this down. So here we have Mars, nothing in the 6th, nothing visible. And we have Sun in the 10th. So they have 2 malefics for the favorite. And what about the underdog? Nothing in their ascendant, nothing in the 3rd, nothing in the 6th, nothing in the 10th, and just moon in the 11th, but we don't use the moon. So the underdog, poor underdog, has 0, nothing, no malefics in upachayas, and that's how they played. Now, one thing is, you'll notice that in this very busy 10th house, we also have a couple of benefics. So the question is, what do we do with benefics? Benefics, if they are exaggerated or strong, what do I mean by exaggerated? They are either exalted or retrograde. Then we can use them. So in this case, we have a Mercury that is retrograde. We can add him to the list of planets we count in the first technique. The victory house method is what I call it, or the VH method. So we can add Mercury because he's in his own sign strong and he's retrograde on top of it. So we can go to 3 to nothing. Now, you can also make a case for Jupiter because he is in his own nakshatra of Punarvasu, if you want. And this is where your own intuition will come in. We already have 3 to 0. With the addition of Jupiter, it would become 4 to 0. And in fact, that was the match result, 4 goals to nothing. But wait, Simon, Mercury is also combust. Therefore, it's very weak, isn't it? You see this? Mercury is within 5 degrees of the sun. Yeah, and combustion is also a form of exaggeration. So what happened on this day is that this is a chart for Germany and Portugal. Germany's player, one of their players scored a hat trick, 3 goals in this game. That was Thomas Müller, who is a very Mercury kind of guy. If you look at him, he is like, if you were to paint a picture of the planet Mercury, that's the guy you would paint. And what happened was that the way he was playing, one of the Portugal players got so hot and pissed off at him. By the way, and it was extremely hot in that game. Everyone was sweating. They had sunburn. It was a mess. that one of the Portugal players, I think, headbutted him and got a red card. And as a result, Mueller kicked a penalty and scored 2 other goals. So he ended up scoring 3 goals. So what's actually happening in the sky will reflect what's happening on the field. For prediction purposes, it doesn't really matter because all we're concerned about is who's going to win. But for color commentary, you can use the fact that Mercury was combust, the fact that Mars was in the very close to the ascendant. All of that plays a part. But there was definitely not, it wasn't a friendly game. Let's just put it that way. There was a lot of heat, anger, frustration, mostly on the opponent's side. So the moral of this story is you can also bring in benefics, but do it judiciously. Malefics are the main planets for this technique, but you can also bring in benefics if they are exaggerated, meaning exalted, retrograde, primarily. Or if you just see them and that planet, look, after all, Jyotish is an intuitive, it's 2 wings of the Jyotish bird are logic and intuition. A computer can't give you 100%, can't give you the accurate predictions, nor can just using your intuition. You have to combine both. These are the 2 wings of the bird. And if you do just one wing, you can't fly. So you want to use logic, but you also want to incorporate your intuition. So if you see this Mercury and you go, man, that's just strong in its own house. This sun has Digbala, a lot of strength. This favorite's got a lot of strength. You can use Mercury. And you can even use Jupiter if you think, gosh, he's in his own nakshatra. And on top of it, I'm going to go a little deep here for you, but hopefully it's not too deep. On top of it, he's exactly on the degree of the Yogatara of this nakshatra. The Yogatara is the star Pollux, Pollux. And folks, this is something we're going to cover in this class, the Yogataras, which are the marker stars of each of the Vedic asterisms or nakshatras. And sorry for my horrible spelling here, but not spelling, but handwriting. So this star, Pollux, is exactly 29 degrees. So this Jupiter, if you looked up at the sky at the time the match started, you would have seen Jupiter conjunct Pollux. So these 2 bright objects next to each other in the zenith, the 10th house of victory, fame, and fortune for the ascendant. Combine all of that together and the fact that Germany were a favorite, and you get victory. The 10th house for the underdog is the 4th. This is the 10th house for the underdog. And you can see it doesn't have much going on, does it? This is the victory, place of victory for the underdog. So similarly, you can use these techniques in everyday life, right? If someone asks you, is Harvard the school that I should go to? And Harvard is what they've mentioned, so Harvard gets the ascendant. And you've got this chart. Well, gee whiz, this is a pretty damn good chart because now Harvard becomes the 1st house, and everything that is not Harvard becomes the 7th house, the opponent. The opponent is the other option. You get it? And notice that so far I'm not even using the lords of houses. I'm not using, those of you who know Tajika, I don't use that at all, in fact. I don't use Ittasala yoga and these different aspects of Jyotish. This is very simple Vedic astrology. And you'll find that 70 to 80% of the time it works. And 70 to 80% is actually a pretty good percentage. So here's one question. Yeah, so the question is, do I always use the Krishnamurti Ayanamsha? So Kumar noticed that this is the Krishnamurti Ayanamsha. This is a good question, and the answer is very simple. You can use the normal Lahiri Ayanamsha. I use Krishnamurti because one of the techniques that I use, that I love, is to use sublords, which is this. And if you're going to use sublords, you need to use the KP Ayanamsha. In fact, the KP New Ayanamsha. For everything else, for what we've been doing, you can use the standard Lahiri Ayanamsha. Perfect, no problem. In fact, the KP Ayanamsha, the KP New, and the Lahiri, they're almost exactly the same. So you don't lose anything. The old KP is different. It's about 5 minutes, 7 minutes difference, depending on when you were born. But these days, the KP, Krishnamurti Padati, and Lahiri is the exact, pretty much the exact same. Okay, so good question. All right. So let me move on now to something more practical that just involves cunning rather than really any kind of Jyotish insight or wit. I'm going to share. I hope this is going okay for you guys, and this is educational for you. And if, again, if you have questions, feel free to chime in. Now, here is a chart of a match. Figurense. Yeah, this is the chart, I believe. Yeah, this is the chart. Yeah, so this was a soccer match just played a few days ago. And as I was sitting watching this match, I pulled the chart, and this is an exact start time. I mean, this is the moment that it started. And by the way, if you see a match on TV, whether it's basketball, soccer, football, understand that the telecast is probably 30 seconds behind the actual start time. So on TV, this started at 6:30, and it was about 30 to 45 seconds. But I have a way of seeing the exact start time, and the real start time was 6:30 and 15 seconds. And the way is there are certain wagering websites that will show you the exact start. And for them, they have to list it because people are doing live. It's like day trading, right? You're trading a stock while it's in action during the day. You can do the same with a soccer match or any kind of match. You can do live wagering. And that's, you know, and that's an advanced thing that we'll discuss, but it's not something I want to talk about here. Anyway, but this match started at 6:30. And I thought, okay, this is an interesting match. And I'll just walk you through what my thought process was. First of all, actually, no, I want you guys to do this with me. Using technique 1, which team has the better physical strength? The favorite or the underdog?
The underdog.
The underdog, right. And why do you say that?
The malefic planet.
Yeah, they have a malefic in their lagna, so that's 1. They have a malefic in their 3rd house, right? 1, 2, 3, that's 2. Then nothing in their 6th, nothing in their 10th, nothing. So they have 2 malefics. For the favorites, they have 1 malefic in the 6th, and that's it. So we have a 2-to-1 advantage for the underdog. They are the physically stronger team. But as we know, physical strength doesn't always correlate to victory. Sometimes a team that is not as strong, that has less opportunities, still manages to win. What about technique number 2, which is Shubha Kartari and Papa Kartari yoga, or SKY or SKY, as I like to call it, or PKY. Do you see any one of those present? So it looks like there is a PKY around the underdog, right? So we have one malefic here, Saturn, and then we have Ketu. Now, here's what I found with Rahu Ketu. For sports prediction, and this may not hold true for prashnas and I should say for natal charts and muhurtas. Muhurta is electional astrology. But for this specific purpose, Rahu Ketu, because they're invisible, don't seem to create this yoga at least nearly as strong as a real malefic would, real visible planet, like Mars or Sun here. So yes, there is a partial PKY, but honestly, it's not a full PKY. As a result, the underdog, so what I found happens is that this team won't play well for half of the match, but the other half they will play well. So basically, this is a half Papakarta yoga. And that's exactly what happens. I've seen quite a few of these, and for half the match, they'll be average at best, and then for the other half, they just fulfill the rest of the potential of the chart. All right. So I saw this chart, and I thought, this is going to be a tough one to call because the underdog has the physical strength, but the favorite has this kind of half-formed. And by the way, what is one name for Rahu? One name for Rahu in Sanskrit is Ardhakaya. Ardhakaya means half-bodied because he was cut in half, right? He's half head, half tail. And that's kind of what this Papakartari does. It gives half a result. So the game was tied going into, or I forget what the score was at halftime, but what ended up happening is in the second half, the underdog came back and just blasted them, and they won 2-1. In fact, I think the favorite led 1-0 at the halftime, and then the underdog came back and won. Now, one of the reasons that they won is not just because of this physical strength. There is stuff happening in the Navamsha, the D9, that is very relevant to this match. And the D9 techniques are something that I've spent a lot of time researching, and man, they work. This is actually the most potent influence on game charts when it applies. And because it affects the motivation. And when a team has its motivation depressed, no matter how strong they are or what's going well for them in the actual match, they won't have the follow-through to win. So that's what happened in this match. The underdog won 2-1. Half the match they were losing, but the second half they came back strong because the favorite lost their motivation. Now, the reason I'm showing you this chart is to make a point, and that point is this. Now I'm going to pull up something that happened after this match. Can you see this chart? I want you to look at this chart, and in fact, I'm going to put these side by side. Let's put this one here. And we're going to put the other one right here. Oops. Forgive me for fumbling around here a little bit, but I want you to see, and I know this may be hard to see on the screen, but hopefully you can see these two charts. This one occurred in a place called Florianopolis, Brazil. And this was in Fort Worth, Texas. This was at 6:30 p.m. This was at 5:05 local time. This is always local time, by the way. So 6:30 p.m. In Brazil, their -3 time zone was actually 3:30 in Texas. So this match was over before this match began, or it ended as this match was starting. I forget exactly, but Figueirense ended well before this one was, you know, on its way. What do you notice between these two? First of all, do you notice any difference?
No.
There's no difference. Even if you look at the Navamsha, and here I'll look at the D9, you can see it's the same. It is incredible, but this is the exact same chart. Only 5 minutes of arc separate this ascendant from this ascendant. Everything, including the sublords, well, actually, the relevant sublords is the same. There is one sublord here that looks like it's different, but we don't care about the second house sublord. When we talk about KP, you'll see what I mean. But everything here is the same. Guess what happened? In this basketball match, this is a basketball match between Baylor and, between Auburn and TCU. TCU was supposed to win the game by 9 points, and the game started off very evenly matched. And at halftime, I think they were tied, or Auburn was up by a point. In the second half, the underdog that was supposed to lose just came back and blew them out of the water. The same thing that happened in this soccer match is the same thing that happened in this college basketball game. And they were winning by 20, but then they sort of let the favorites come back, so they only won by 8 points. The underdog only won by 1 goal here. But the point is, the match played out exactly the same. And the final score was that the underdog won by a comfortable margin, by a goal in this case and 8 points here. My point in telling you this is that you don't have to be a genius if you want to be a successful investor. What I did with Costa Rica in the first game is I saw that Costa Rica's match was the same as the match the day before with Holland. And I said, well, if Jyotish works, then the same result should happen. And guess what? Jyotish works. So it's kind of an eerie thing, but when you see 2 exact horoscopes, even though they're for teams that are thousands of miles apart and different cultures, different sports, the destiny, the karma, is fixed in a similar way, and should express in a similar way. And I've seen this happen a lot. So as a savvy investor, if you see 2 exact same charts, you can reasonably assume that, hey, probably the same result can be expected in this chart as in this chart. And this isn't, you know, anything mind-shattering in terms of technique. You're just following what nature is showing you. Okay? All right. So that's those are a couple of recent examples, but these are slightly more complex charts because we have a half PKY, we have more physical strength, but like I said, in the Navamsha, there is stuff going on that really hampers the favorite, their motivation, and so they run out of motivation basically. All right. So let's close that and go back to our presentation. All right, so that was, yes, is there a question?
Yeah, it's Lindsay. Do the movable and fixed signs play factors? Do you look at that at all? Because I noticed on those 2, they were movable, but this one is...
you know, these things play, you can use for color commentary. You can use movable fix to look at how a game is going to go, whether it'll be exciting or not. But in terms of results, no, doesn't matter. In fact, a lot of things that you would think matter for sports prediction, they just don't. Because in sports prediction, we don't care so much about the nuance, whether, you know, a player got a blister on their hand or, you know, how many yellow cards someone got. We care about the final result. And because of that, a lot of the things that you would use when dealing with humans, like, hey, is she the one? Or should I build my house here? Or should I buy that house or this house? Where you want nuance, right? You want, you know, let's say if someone says, should I buy this house? And it's all fire signs. Well, there may be problem with the heat in the house or the kitchen or the electricity, and you can use that as color commentary. But for a soccer game or a match, all you care about is who's going to win, typically. Unless, you know, your son or father or friend is one of the players playing and you hope they don't get hurt, but that's another question. All right.
Thank you.
So yeah, so you can use these two techniques in other areas. For example, let's say your mom, or let's say a client comes to you and says, hey, my mom is on her annual Eat, Pray, Love tour of the world, and I haven't heard from her. Is she okay? And you pull the chart and you see that the moon and the fourth house, or the ruler of the fourth house, is surrounded by benefics. So there's the moon, and it's got Jupiter on one side and Venus on the other. Then it's safe to say, because the moon represents the mother, right? And this person is asking about the mother. Then you can say, yeah, your mom is having a grand old time and she's surrounded by good people, by positive influences. But if the same question comes to you, and now you have Saturn in the third house and Mars in the fifth, surrounding the fourth house of the mother, which is what this person is asking about. How is my mom? Well, now this is a Papa Kartari around the matter at hand, which is the mom. And you could say, you know, mom is having less options. She's surrounded by circumstances that curtail her options, so she's feeling a little overwhelmed. And it's probably a very good idea for you to get a hold of her, right? So you can use this in a prashna, in a chart, to find out, just as we found out who's going to win the game. All right. So I was, let's see, how are we doing on time? Oh, we're doing okay. It's 11:11. There are more techniques. And at this point, I want to take a little break and tell you a little bit about the course that I'm going to be offering, which is a full investigation into every technique I've learned and studied, including Western astrology, including picking multiple options like horse races or stocks or things like that. And I just want to tell you a little bit about what my take on this course is, if you're interested in going into the full thing and what it's not. So first of all, this isn't about gambling. Gambling is, very few people have their Dharma aligned for speculation, whether in the stock market or sports investing, as this is potentially addictive and often illegal in different places. In our private sessions, we can see if your stars align for speculation and during which times in your life that may be possible. However, astrology is ultimately meant to be used in the service of humanity, not for personal gain. If you choose to speculate, we can consider the strategies for managing some of the potential blowback, including giving away part of your winnings to charity. And so I wanted to read this to you because this comes from my heart. And if you have the chart, the stars line up for you to speculate, even then you have to take precautions to make sure that you continue to earn the good karma of being able to use this for speculation, whether it's in the stock market, which is speculation, or in sports investing. This course also is not a primer on Vedic astrology, so you need to have a background before beginning. To shore this up, I will offer Jyotisha Basics Intensive before the course begins for those of you coming from a Western background or who are just sort of beginning and want to improve your skills. So the way I have this course scheduled is we start February 14th on Valentine's Day. That's the official beginning. But before that, I will be starting probably on the 7th. And I say probably because it depends on the level of the students coming in. If we need more time, we'll start a day or two earlier to bring you up to the level where you understand a lot of this terminology. So what is this course about? Well, hopefully you have an idea by now based on my teaching style and what I've presented so far. But definitely it will give you the tools to pick the best between two options. As well, we're going to study more advanced techniques for picking between multiple options. So if someone says, should I buy Microsoft, Apple, GE, or JCPenney? I don't know, does JCPenney still exist in the stock market? I'm not sure. Some of you guys will know better than I do. But here you have these 3 or 4 or 5 options. Which is the best? Is any of them good? And in what order? You will be able to know that. And of course, you know, I'm going to share with you the techniques like the Navamsha techniques, like the Yoga Tara techniques. When you see a planet or a cusp conjunct one of the main Yoga Taras. And by the way, these Yoga Taras work in in natal astrology as well. We have Donald Trump's chart, President Trump now, who, and this is not a verified birth time, but it's the birth time that is going around. But if it is the correct birth time, his ascendant is exactly on the Yoga Tara for Magha Nakshatra. And that Yoga Tara is the star Regulus, the heart of the lion. And that is the star that the Sphinx is aligned to. That is the star that represents ancient kingdoms and royalty and ancient traditions, lineages. And for sports prediction, it represents victory. So a person who has, or a team that has that star prominent, is much more likely to win, and often to win by a blowout, than a team that doesn't. And we'll look at how to use those Yoga Taras. So there are a lot of techniques that are new that I'll be introducing. The techniques I've taught today are well known in Jyotish, but hopefully you've gotten a little bit of a new spin on how to use them. And of course, we'll be able to see where there's fixed karma, mixed karma, and non-fixed karma. And as a prognosticator, you want to make your predictions where you see the karma is fixed, where it's not just one thing, but 2, 3, or 4 things that all point to the same outcome. Mixed karma is still okay, but it's harder to predict. And non-fixed karma is just a chart that just, you look at it and you shake your head and you go, I have no idea what's going to happen. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. No astrologer has all the answers. I don't have all the answers. And I've shared with you openly that on a good day, you can be 90 to 100% correct. That's on a good day. On a bad day, you will be at about 50%. And so on average, you're somewhere in between. And if you're at 50%, you're investing, you're going to lose money. Just so you know, if you're at 70% and you're investing, more than likely you're going to make a good deal of money. But again, I use money as a barometer of how correct you can be. Again, my goal is not to teach gambling. This is to teach these techniques. All right. So, yeah, and we'll learn the difference between how to use these. So, for example, how to look at a prashna based on the first sound that is said, the first name that is given, versus, and sometimes you will ask the client for a number. These are all different techniques for how to cast the different horoscopes. And of course, there's a bunch of bonuses with the course. These are on my website. I won't bore you with them here. You do get a nice bonus on Parashara's Light, which is the software that I use because Mikhail, the owner, has agreed to give my students pass this discount on, and some other cool bonuses. So so this is what it comes down to. The price of the course, of the entire course, I originally had at priced at the same as my Dharma type certification, which is $4,500. And with the intent of passing on some savings and bonuses to you. But I thought to make this really, really accessible for most everyone, I brought the course down to $995. And I'm still going to give everybody the same bonuses, which are that 2 free sessions with me, which are $150 each. So that's $300 right there, where we can check to see your chart. We can talk about specific questions you have about the course, any way you want to use those sessions. Another bonus is that you get to use the price of the course, which is $995, and apply that towards any future Dharma type certification. So basically, you get this course for free if you take the Dharma type certification. And there's a lot of other goodies that I give. People who have taken my Dharma type certification know that I bring in guest teachers and offer lots of, other kind of freebies to students. The duration of the course is set for 9 weeks, but again, my Dharma course was supposed to be 3 months. We are now at 10 months and still going strong because students are still interested, and it's my Dharma to teach. So this course will go on as long as it needs to until everyone is fully fledged, fully trained in these techniques. So I'm putting it at 9 weeks, but my goal is to have a sangha, a sort of spiritual and like-minded group where we can share thoughts, predictions, questions, difficulties. We'll have a private Facebook group as well where we'll share all of our predictions and information. So basically, I'm going to open this up as of now. And I will need to know if you guys are interested in doing it by this weekend so that I can get you in, because I don't want this to be a huge course. I want maybe 10, 12 people max so that we can keep this more of a sort of a Kula Sangha kind of feel. All right, any questions so far before I move forward? All right, let's see. We have a chat question. Will we meet online? Yeah. So we will meet once a week online, and just like we did today, the classes will be recorded and placed in a private folder that you'll have access to. So even if you can't attend the meeting, you can download that class, and it's yours for life. You keep this for life. This isn't just it's not just an online thing. You get to download the courses and keep them. Then if you have questions, we can meet one-on-one. You can email me, or through the private Facebook group, we can interact and discuss different theories, techniques, and so on. Yeah, it's a good question. So this is all online. And it will be at a time that's available for both people on the West Coast and East Coast, as well as Europe. So it'll be probably around this same time. I haven't fixed the start time. Are there books to purchase? No, you get all your materials from me as a PDF. And there's about a good 80 to 90 pages of material. So I'm gonna prefer to overgive than undergive, but you'll have everything we talked about today, as well as every technique will be spelled out in note form and with all the example charts we use, and you'll have that as an online PDF. Yeah, so there's nothing else to purchase, basically. Your price of admission is the price of the course, and I take it from there. Yeah, good questions. And I'll tell you why I'm even sharing this, because for the last 3 years, this has been my little secret, and maybe some of my sort of inner students know about this, but the reason is this stuff works in real life. And I got to a point where just sitting and playing and trying to figure out who wins got boring for me. And not because I got so good at it. I'm still at maybe 80%, but because there's a lot more to this, to Jyotisha, than just sports. And I want to take this beyond the proving ground into the real world. So, okay. If there, yeah, so this, and here's another question. I am releasing a book on this. The book is called Gambler's Dharma, which seems kind of like an ironic title, but when you read the book, you'll understand. Yeah, the book is included. So you get a free copy of the book as part of the course. And some of these techniques that we're going to study are in the book, but there is a lot that didn't make it into the book that we're going to cover, along with the practical examples and the one-on-one time. The book is basically like a workbook, and you will get a copy of the book. In fact, the handouts, a PDF that I'm going to give you, a lot of them are from the book. But the book will come out this, I think, June or July. So it won't be out until this summer. All right. So let me give you a little preview of some of the other techniques that we're going to look at here over the course of this course. And one of those techniques, so let's just back up here, is what I found when I was looking at these charts is that the Victory House method, the method of malefics in the Upachayas, it did work a lot of the time, but a lot of the time it didn't. And I couldn't figure out why. And then I started thinking about the idea of what a house is, or a bhava. And a house is a certain space, space in the zodiac. But the meanings of a house tend to concentrate on that house's cusp. What is a cusp? The word cusp, if you're a dentist, you know that you have bicuspids, right? Bicuspids, I don't know. Quadricuspids probably don't exist. But a cusp is a point. It's a sharp point where the essence of that tooth or the essence of that house collects. So it's the most powerful and most sensitive point of a house. And I thought, well, wait, what if there are planets on those cusps? Wouldn't they affect the outcome? And the answer is certainly an emphatic yes. And here is an example of a chart. And I'll just give you this. For those of you who are not coming on into the course, you can use this as a little bonus technique. Whenever you see Jupiter within 2.5 degrees of a cusp, it bodes well for that team or for that person. So here we have the favorite. Here we have the underdog. Look at the rising cusp, the ascendant. It's at 10 degrees, 28 minutes. look at Jupiter here at 10 degrees 41 minutes. Jupiter exactly on the 7th cusp, folks. This is another one of those no-brainers. You go, oop, underdog's going to win. On top of that, we have a nice Shubha Kartari Yoga, although it's marred by 2 malefics as well. So we can't really say the Shubha Kartari is going to give much here. When you have these Shubha or Papa Kartari, they have to be pure. They have to be unmarred by other planets. So this isn't giving much. The key here is this Jupiter. And in fact, the underdog won despite being very disadvantaged in sublords. And so they only won 7-4, whereas they should have won by more if they didn't have other things against them. And we'll talk about what those are. Because in the final analysis, when you're looking at a chart, you have to incorporate every technique, every possible influence before you make a decision. So is the Navamsha for the favorite or the underdog? Is the victory house for the favorite or the underdog? Are the cusps for the favorite or the underdog? Is the Papa or Shubha Kartari? Are the sublords? Are the Yogataras? Then, and I have a pro forma to follow, and you have a little a table, and you just fill in the table, and you can see by the end of it who has the advantage. And it works very nicely. But anyway, in this case, the underdog with Jupiter on the 7th cusp, this was a no-brainer. Underdog wins. And they were heavy underdogs, by the way. Milwaukee is a terrible baseball team. Sorry, Milwaukee. Pittsburgh at the time was a very good baseball team. Everyone thought Pittsburgh would win. Not the case. People will look at you like, you bet on Milwaukee? What? How did you know that? Well, it's all Jupiter. So this is a little bonus. And by the way, for this technique, we use the outer planets. This is why I have Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus. This is also why I have the Upagrahas, the subplanets Gulika and Upaketu. These invisible grahas also have an effect. And that's why they're represented here. I don't use them with the first 2 techniques, so that's why I haven't brought them up. But for the next technique, and in the class on February 14th, this is the technique we're going to cover, the cusps of the 6th house, the 12th house, the 10th house, the 4th house, the 1st, and the 7th. And what to do when Gulika is on the 10th, what to do when Sun is on the 7th, what does it mean when Sun is on the 6th. All of that will be covered in the next class, starting February 14th. So you'll have a list of the planets, what their effects are on the cusps, and how to judge. So that's a little preview of what's to come, and that's essentially my presentation for today. I hope this was enlightening, and I'm happy to answer some questions about this and about the course if you have them. No questions. All your questions have been answered. That's great. That's either really good or really bad. What is your website to sign up? Great question. Thank you. I'm terrible at website stuff. So to sign up, just send me an email, and I will send you. Basically, you PayPal me. Let me just pause this portion because we're recording this class. Excuse me 1 second. I'm just gonna pause the share here. Basically, email me to confirm that you want to be in the class, and I will give you instructions. And by the way, guys, I never let money stand in the way of knowledge, and I really mean this. And if you really want to be in this course, but you have financial issues that prevent you, I will work with you. So if you want to email me and explain your situation, and you really want this knowledge, my goal is to spread the knowledge. So send me an email to siddhadev@yahoo.com and just let me know what you'd like to do. So I will work with everyone. Have you tried predicting numbers in the lottery? I haven't personally, but when I taught the picking multiple options technique, I taught this in our Dharma type certification class for our Dharma students. So Lindsay, you know about this. One of the students tried it with all 60 numbers in the lotto, right? So she basically cast charts to see which of these 60 numbers is the best choice, like which are the top 6 choices. And she did pretty well. I mean, this was on her first day, and I think she got 3 out of the 6 numbers. And she was very close. There was a tie between some of them, and she would have gotten 4. She definitely would have gotten 4 because I saw her numbers, but she got 3 out of the 6. It's harder because there's so many choices. So the short answer is no. I haven't tried picking lotto numbers. Can you? Yeah, but should you? I don't know. That's a question you have to answer. Because you're asking the Jyotish muse to work on 60 charts for you, and it can be a little taxing, but technically speaking, you can, yes. Have I done it? Not really, no. But good question. So my website is spirittype.com. And when you go to the site, you will see right there on the homepage the link to the course. You can go to the course. By the end of today, I will have a sign up button and a PayPal button, so you can sign up directly. Okay? That's not up yet, but the details of the course are up, and you can read a lot more about it there and why I'm presenting this and all the bonuses you get. And basically, you know, my goal is to give you way more bonuses than than the course is worth. So hopefully that'll incentivize you to join us and to join this group, this sangha, because I'm not teaching this again. This is a one-time deal this year. So if you're in, you're in. If not, I understand. But this is it. So we start this February and we lock the course down. That'll be it. So I invite you guys to come check it out and learn how to win with Jyotish and to choose winners in life and sport. So awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for joining. And if you have questions, I invite you to come to email me if you like. And I look forward to seeing you when we begin on February 14th, which is Valentine's Day officially. That's when we start our second class on techniques. And February 7th, which is when I will be teaching the basics. And those of you who know the basics, you may not need it, but you're welcome to join then as well. All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Namaskar. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahi Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, bye now.